It all begins in 1981 in Reno, Nevada. Young Kenny Wells brings his girlfriend Kay to the office of a geological exploration company founded by his father. That same day, his father sends him to a new deposit, and it turns out to be their last meeting. The old man soon dies, and his son's business goes from bad to worse. 7 years pass. Balding, aged, and with a bottle at hand, Kenny is barely keeping his head above water. He calls investors, trying to convince them to put money in, but no one cares. The company is falling apart, he lives with his girlfriend, and his prospects are zero. But one day Kenny has a dream about Indonesia. It was there that geologist Michael Acosta once discovered the largest copper deposit. Now Acosta is obsessed with finding the Ring of Fire, a gold vein in the jungles of Kalimantan. Kenny grabs his business card and decides to take a chance. He pawns his last valuables and rushes off on a business trip. The meeting turns out to be comical. Acosta is a real scientist, but tired and disappointed. Kenny looks like he's been kicked out of a casino penniless. But his passionate speech is mesmerizing. They decide to join forces and head upriver, straight into the heart of the Indonesian jungle. The journey is a constant shock for Kenny. The wild landscapes, tribes, heat, and mosquitoes are not exactly what an American businessman is used to. But Acosta is confident, there is gold here. And so, right on a piece of paper, Kenny hastily writes a contract. The men shake hands and become partners. Back in America, Wells rushes to find money. Investors do not believe in the project, but he literally begs for small amounts to buy equipment and start excavations. Soon they return to Kalimantan, set up a tent camp, and begin hunting for their dream. The first soil samples are sent to the laboratory. While waiting for the results, Kenny and Michael spend their evenings around the campfire, discussing life, history, and their dreams. But the reports come in one after another, and the news gets worse and worse. Gold is found here and there, but in such tiny amounts that hope fades. The money runs out, and the workers begin to disperse. Kenny desperately tries to convince them to stay, but to no avail. And then fate strikes another blow: malaria. Kenny falls ill with a high fever and is confined to bed. While he battles the disease, Michael turns to the locals and convinces them to return. In exchange, he promises them water filters. Kenny gives away his last $2,000, and this technological miracle does indeed bring people back to the mine. When he regains consciousness, work there is in full swing. And then a breakthrough occurs. The lab reports there is gold. Not much, but enough to start mining. An enthusiastic Kenny and Michael celebrate their victory. In America, Kenny feels like a winner again. He is interviewed by journalists, and investors who previously laughed in his face are now knocking on his door. The company's shares skyrocket. Kenny moves to a spacious office, and even Wall Street begins to whisper about his project. Bankers come with offers, partnerships, control, strategic deals. But Kenny refuses: no control, maximum money. The story suddenly jumps forward. Kenny is being questioned by FBI agents. Their boss is interested in who exactly invited the bankers to Indonesia. But the story returns to the past. Kenny leads the delegation through Jakarta Airport straight to Acosta. At the camp, the bankers see the gold with their own eyes. One of them even finds a huge nugget. After that, there are no doubts left. The project gets the green light. Kenny and Kay move to New York. On September 8th, the company's shares go on sale. And it's a blast. On the very first day, the price jumps to $70. The most successful start of the year. Kenny immerses himself in the life of a rich man. Parties, interviews, champagne, and expensive suits. Managing the company takes a back seat. Meanwhile, Kay accidentally overhears the bankers talking. They are going to kick her boyfriend out of the business. She rushes to warn Kenny, but finds him with another girl. An argument and tears follow, and Kay leaves, saying, "Beware of bankers." But Kenny is too caught up in his new life to listen to her. At a party, he meets tycoon Mark Hancock, who owns almost all of the gold mining operations in the region. Hancock offers to buy Kenny's share, but he refuses. And then the worst begins. Soldiers arrive at the mine. The Indonesian authorities nationalize the enterprise. The workers are expelled, Michael is fired, and everything they have built collapses. During questioning, Kenny tells it like it is: his mine was simply stolen. The blame lies with the connections of gold magnate Hancock and his friends at the very top, all the way up to former U.S. presidents. With such patrons, negotiating with Indonesian leader Suharto is a piece of cake. And here's the result: the authorities nationalized the mine and the company's shares plummeted. Intoxicated with grief, Kenny calls Kay to apologize, but she doesn't answer. In the morning, Michael Acosta finds him sleeping right on the street. A fight breaks out between them, but it quickly turns into a frank conversation. Michael admits that he is not a genius. He found his first deposit purely by accident when he got stuck in the jungle during the rainy season. The men make peace and decide to try again. They return to Indonesia and turn to Suharto's son. The guy is a spoiled rich kid who loves tigers and luxury. To impress him, Kenny boldly walks right into the cage with a tame predator and pets it. This gesture convinces the young prince, and soon the deal is done. The jungle is once again open for exploration. This news causes an uproar on Wall Street, and Kenny prepares to receive an honorary award, a gold pickaxe from the National Association of Geologists. He even tries to make up with Kay, but finds her in the company of another man and leaves without attending the ceremony. At the ceremony itself, Michael helps his friend tie his bow tie, but quietly leaves the hall during the speech. The morning after the celebration, Kenny is in for a shock. He is met by a crowd of angry people. It turns out that an independent examination has proven that there is no gold in the mine. Michael faked all the tests by adding river gold bought from locals to the samples. Kenny's entire empire was built on the deception of one person. Then events unfold like dominoes. Acosta manages to sell his shares and hide the money offshore, after which he disappears without a trace. The FBI arrives at the office, fraud investigation, interrogations, accusations. Kenny is left alone, without money, without a company, without friends. The agents tell him a gruesome story. Michael was allegedly arrested by the military in Jakarta, lifted by helicopter over the jungle, and asked to step out. Kenny doesn't believe it. It's too convenient. With millions stolen, Acosta could easily have faked his death and disappeared forever. The military allegedly found Michael Acosta's body. The clothes matched, but his face and hands had been gnawed by wild animals, so it was impossible to identify him with certainty. Indonesian doctors classified the autopsy as secret, and the remains were quickly cremated. It would seem that this was the end of the story. But one circumstance caused confusion. President Suharto's son managed to sell almost all of his shares in the company long before the scam was uncovered. The family's fortune grew exponentially. There were too many coincidences. They say Acosta is buried. But where did the $164 million he transferred through offshore accounts go? No one knows. Suspicion also falls on Kenny Wells. He swears he wasn't involved in the fraud and even now can't believe his friend betrayed him. But the fact remains, he lost everything. After questioning, the FBI releases Kenny, forbidding him to leave the state for the time being. After collecting his belongings from the office, he drives to Kay's house. He is holding a white rose in his hands. The girl opens the door, surprised, but lets her ex in. They sit in the kitchen and drink coffee. Then Kay hands him a stack of letters that were addressed to him. Among the bills and advertising brochures is an envelope. Inside is the very contract that was once hastily written on a piece of cloth in an Indonesian village. And there is another surprise, a check for $82 million. Exactly half of what Acosta earned from the scam. The film ends here.